WRC newcomer, the Tet Rally Latvia, got underway in the capital city Riga a couple of days ago. The event then living up to its fearsome reputation as this Baltic blast through the Latvian countryside has moved into its second full day. The next challenge is the 13 kilometers of the Vekpils test. Well, this new Liepāja-based episode is our 8th round of 13 in 2024, so just over halfway through the WRC's latest global adventure. Latvia marks stage 2 of our summer of speed, with Finland's Jumps waiting in the wings. Greece and Chile complete the challenges on the dirt, with the season again wrapped up back on asphalt in Central Europe and Japan. Well, the Drivers' Championship is looking like a 3-horse race as we move into the second half of the season. Just 21 points separating Hyundai's Thierry Neuville, Toyota's lead challenger Elfyn Evans, and Neuville's teammate, the 2019 champion Ott Tänak, who comes from just across the border in Estonia. And Neuville has led that championship since his opening round victory at the historic Monte Carlo rally. Evans is 15 points off the lead, with Tänak well within reach, despite a frustrating weekend last time out in Poland. The manufacturer's race is also too close to call. Hyundai Shell Mobis hold a 10-point lead over reigning champions Toyota Gazoo Racing, with M Sport Ford in third place. So it was into the great unknown for most on Friday morning. One truth that was known was that Neuville, as the championship leader, would again suffer as the road opening gravel sweeper. The deep dirt and the Latvian tracks left the Belgian down in 9th. His closest rival Evans hadn't fared much better in 7th. It would be Operation Catch Up once again for the two drivers with most to lose in round 8. Third on the road, Neuville's teammate Tänak was also fighting for grip. The Estonian was 4th for most of the day before brake issues, and a particularly slippery final test saw a slip 2 places down the order. And one of the beneficiaries was Adrien Fourmeau. The Frenchman had struggled for the relentless rhythm required on these breathtakingly fast roads early on, but an end-of-day charge saw the 29-year-old climb to 5th. Also taking advantage of the final stage fade from Tänak was Taka Katsuta. After a frustrating outing on Poland's speed test, Toyota's Japanese star was quick to remind that he too is no slouch on the quick stuff. Taka taking 4th at the end of the day. Seb Ogier had missed Rally Poland due to a pre-rally accident, but was soon making his mark on the WRC's new edition. A small scare in the day's opener aside, the Frenchman's natural ability to get the best on his mainly soft compound tyre package saw a stage win midway through today and 3rd place overall. A lot of pressure had been heaped on local boy Martin Sess after an eye-catching 5th place finish in Poland in a non-hybrid Puma, now on home soil with the fully boost-assisted M Sport Ford. WRC's racy rookie was clearly aided by his late road position, but snatched a couple of stage wins on the way to 2nd place. And the Latvian was the filling in a multiple world champion sandwich with Ogier behind him. It was once again Callum Rovanperä out front. The 23-year-old is a 2-time national champion in Latvia from his teenage years, and with a hat-trick of stage wins to wrap up the day, the Finn had already built up a handy buffer. The gap between Rovanperä and Sess was 15.7 seconds at the end of Friday, with Ogier 21.6 off the top spot. Tänak slipping behind Katsuta and Fourmeau to 6th, and championship frontrunners Evans and Neuville 7th and 9th respectively. And road position has again proved key this morning, but Tänak was one driver who has prevailed over drivers behind him on the road. The Estonian getting back past Fourmeau, and then Katsuta as well into 4th with his first stage win in the previous test. In the fight for podium places, even with this more level playing field of similar road positions, Martin Sess has continued to keep the Latvian flag flying high. For the first 2 stages, was holding off the 8-time world champion ahead of him. Ogier, though, has finally overhauled the local hero. The Frenchman right on the limit in stage 11. A little bit too much in places. He was briefly off the road near the finish, but the Toyota star held on and doing just enough to move into 2nd place. No change out front, though, with Rovanperä continuing where he left off the previous evening. The Finn notching up his 200th stage win while he tightened his grip on the top spot. So we've had a bit of a reshuffle on the leaderboard then. Rovanperä still leads, but he now has his teammate Ogier behind in second. The Frenchman just 0.2 of a second ahead of local star Cess. Tanak back up to fourth after passing both Formeau and Katsuta this morning. So we're going to move on to the Vecpils test then. It's just over 12.5 kilometres long and has been a regular in European competition, which will once again be good news for Martin Cess. It starts on a wide road with plenty of fast-flowing sequences into a famous section used as recently as 2022 in the ERC. And the average speed's so high in here. We've got 6 chicanes along the way to break up some of the longer straights. And much of the rally has had a fairly hard base, as we've seen, been topped with a thick layer of loose gravel, while the surface can get sandier among the trees. So expect road sweeping to be a big issue again in this first pass. But don't take my word for it. Let's hear from Latvia's finest for a bit more insight.
It is very, I would say, special stage, and every, I would say, Baltic rally driver knows the stage, which is one of the most famous we've got. It's now faster and straighter, how it was used to be back in the days, but still it's very, very fast. And yeah, I would say this will be one of the fastest stages, which will end in a very nice place where you go right-hander over the crest, and it will be a really good image from the hill, because we're going down the hill there.
Well, it sounds like we're in for a treat then, and certainly looks like Mr. Cess knows this one well. That's Mr. Formeau and Alex Correa taking a little bit of a break in the shade there. Plenty of fans out here, though. Let's have a run through our start order for Saturday positions. As always, reversed for this second leg. Paul Esa-Pekka Lappi then first on the road to help out his teammate Thierry Neuville. Then come Gregoire Munster, Elfyn Evans trying to chase down the guys ahead. Oyt Tanak already moving up, which is good news for him. Formeau, then Katsuta and the rally leaders. As mentioned, Cess now just been overtaken by his teammate Seb Ogier. Oliver Solberg leading the way in the WRC2 class, so plenty to keep our eyes on in this fascinating new stage. Chenny alongside me as always. Difficult one for Esa-Pekka, isn't it, out there? But yeah, the damage was done yesterday morning, and he's doing a job for his team. But good to see that he's not let his spirits drop this morning.
Yeah, and it is very difficult not to, really, when you know, we saw yesterday, PK, that Esa-Pekka backed right off in the final stage to allow a position swap between himself and Thierry Neuville to give Thierry the road position advantage, albeit by just one car. Coming into today, so Esa-Pekka opening the road, and he's been doubly punished, hasn't he? As you were talking about, this is not a traditional rally where we do the morning loop and then repeat it in the afternoon. Everything is being run for the first time. So again, later this afternoon, albeit this is the only stage that is repeated, everything else is brand new again. So Esa-Pekka just having a bit of a rough day today.
I mean, I just mentioned before, it's a great situation for the organised to be in. This is a beautiful wide stretch of road, isn't it? You heard Cess singing its praises a little bit earlier on, but yeah, they've got kind of embarrassment of riches. There's so many great stages, but we're not having that repeated loop in the afternoon. Boy, does it make things tough for the guys out front. So yeah, the likes of Lappi and Neuville struggling, but what a stretch of road this is, Chenny. Yeah,
beautiful stretch of road, really fast, open and flowing. It will clean a lot though, PK, so for sure there's no question Esa-Pekka Lappi and Thierry Neuville will be punished for it. The cars that are running later will have an advantage, because there will be that clean line swept away. We saw some ruts appearing on some of the other stages that were run this morning. I don't think that will happen quite so much in here, because it is so fast and so flowing, but yeah, for sure. It just goes to show how fine the margins are, doesn't it? But yeah, for sure, the stage will clean a great deal.
Yeah, there's a couple of those chicanes I mentioned. As I said, the speeds are so high. They just had to put a couple of these chicanes. Interesting, they're made of what look like pretty uncompromising metal barrels rather than hay bales out there. You don't want to be clipping any of those.
Yeah, and normally the barrels are filled with something as well, because if you hit that with an empty barrel, you'll just send it into orbit. So, you know, the barrels are normally filled with either sand or concrete or something like that to pack them and add a bit of substance and weight to them. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. You don't want to hit them, and we have seen people in the past with an open wheel collect the barrel, and very, very quickly it's barrel one rally car nil.
It's pretty beautiful flow all the way through here, isn't it? It's got a whiff of...
Sorry to interrupt you, PK. You can physically see the cleaning effect there, can't you?
Yeah. It's got a feel of a sort of undulating finish road, hasn't it, this one? It's a really lovely stretch of road, as you can see, just under 13 kilometres. As Latvia's about to take it all the way down to the finish line through these beautiful fields here. It's our first benchmark then. 6:05.1, first Rally 1 car through this famous stage.
That is a mega stage. Calera Pera's going to love every second of attacking that.
Yeah, I think they all will. So what the man at the moment for me, Channy, is Tanak. He's really finally, I mean, we expected it a bit yesterday, struggled a bit, certainly his third car on the road, but really has found his feeling out there. So it'll be interesting to see, because he's not a million miles adrift to the podium places now, Tanak.
No, and coming, I'll be honest, coming into this weekend, Tanak was my favourite for the win. He loves the fast flowing roads. He's so good at carrying speed and particularly just going deep into corners. And yesterday, you're right, he struggled a little bit. Today, though, he's on it. Certainly in the last couple of stages, he's been right there, hasn't he? So let's see whether or not he can carry that into this stage and then again into the afternoon. Meanwhile, Thierry Neuville off the line.
Yeah, Thierry's done the best he can kind of achieve at the moment in terms of position. Let's hear from Esapeka.
What a stage. It looks very fast and flowing. What was it like from the driver's seat?
Yeah, it's very fast and wide. Yeah, amazing. I mean, I really like this kind of stage. And we are fastest through so far.
And it's nice to see you smiling.
Yeah. No, we made some steps with the car, so it's yeah. Now the driving starts to be where it was in the past. So yeah, now it's good.
There you go, that's good to hear. Great to see hear the... The smile on Esapeka's face again.
You can't not enjoy this stage. Just look at it. It's just this wonderful, fast... flowing, undulating stretch of road that you can really attack and have moments like that and get away with it, you know, because you've got the road to play with.
Yeah, not much of a line really to follow for Thierry just yet, because it is so wide. And yeah, now in terms of our championship fight, remember it's first set of points get penciled in at the end of Saturday. Neuville currently down in 8th place. That'll be 3 points at the moment.
Certainly got to dig his heels in and try and get himself ahead of that M Sport Puma.
100%, 2.2 seconds quicker than for Thierry. Of course, the other man in that factor, as we showed you at the top of the show, Tanak, 21 points behind the leader coming into this round. As we just mentioned, he's already got up to 4th place. So Tanak already moving in the right direction. He's outscoring the 2 guys ahead of him again. Can he then start to put the pressure on the likes of Martin Sess, who's now within double digits of him in 3rd place? That is a carrot that is being waved at the Estonian right now. Greg Munster. Munster actually slipped behind Lappi as well, hadn't he, before this stage? Let's hear from Thierry.
Came through here with a big smile on his face, and he really enjoyed this one, even from first on the road. How did you find it?
Yeah, it was okay. It's a cool stage. It's quite fast, good flow. I was enjoying it as well. but yeah, trying a few different things and thinking what we can try on the car this afternoon just to test something.
What sort of things did you try in here?
I tried different maps and just to get a different feeling.
Yeah, they're always learning, always developing, seeing what they can do. They'll be coming back through here later, as Chenny mentioned. It's the only stage repeated today. Now, just the final thing on that, so that shows you actually how much Esa-Pekka, even though he's out there in front, has got into a bit of a rhythm out there. It's a wonderful view, isn't it? Because he's actually got past, even though he's first road, he's got past Greg Munster into 9th place in the previous stage. So that just underlines how EP's found something despite being out there on the first. And yeah, Greg just going backwards at the moment.
Yeah, it's a small consolation prize, I think, for Esa-Pekka, isn't it? But you're right, but it matters. It does matter, and it all helps going into tomorrow. I think Greg will be a little bit disappointed. You know, he didn't have a terrible day yesterday, but he just hasn't been able to find the time today relative to certainly Esa-Pekka, Lappi and Thierry Neuville. Those have been around him in terms of road position. Whenever he's been coming through, it has been a bit of a flurry of red numbers for him. So, yeah, for Gregoire Munster, he's just been struggling a little bit this weekend. But again, PK, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the experience and time in the seat is what matters at this level of the sport. And you take Esa-Pekka, Lappi and Thierry Neuville relative to Gregoire Munster, and you go, well, there's two guys there who have a lot more than Gregoire. Albeit EP not getting a full season in the car.
Let's just see Greg through this final sequence then.
Flat to the boards. It's as simple as that. There you go.
6.3 slower than from Munster, and that obviously extends Lappi's. He's 4.1 seconds slower than Lappi, so the Finn, even though he's first on the road, pulling away from the Luxembourger at the moment. But it's great to see, isn't it, these incredible speeds we're seeing. Nobody knows these roads, and everyone, a couple of little moments here and there. We certainly saw a scare for Ogier, but great to see all 10. It's great that we've got 10 Rally 1 cars here in general, but great to see they're all out there going at it, and it's bringing us some incredible battles. How are those tyres looking?
They didn't look too bad. It has to be said, the soft tyre has stood up really well under the conditions.
Let's hear from Greg.
Greg, 4 stages completed now. 6.3 down. You look almost a little bit surprised to see that time.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. We're just struggling a lot with traction. We're just not going forward. So, yeah, we will see what we can do.
To do with the style of stage, it's very fast.
No, I think we're just a bit like with the starting position, and we tend to struggle more in these loose conditions. So, yeah, even when you see Adrian and Martins are struggling a bit more today, while their starting position almost didn't change. So, yeah, we'll try to look at that.
Yeah, traction's the word that's used a lot when you're not feeling it, isn't it, on these sort of roads? We heard it a lot from Lappi. It's that one hard compound Pirelli on the front of Elvin Scott. How do, because obviously that's the same issue that we're hearing a lot from Esa-Pekka. How do you dial that out on slippery roads to find that traction? Because it sounds easy to say, we'll just you know, fix it. But it's obviously not easy to do that.
Yeah, it's a compromise, PK. So it's always a compromise between traction and grip. And if you go one way and in the setup and try to find traction, you tend to lose grip or lateral grips. The car will start to move around that little bit more. So, and for me, this isn't really a traction stage. This is more of a you want loads of lateral grip because it's so fast. You know, the traction comes into play really when you're coming out of heavy braking zones, out of slower corners. So it's more like you want to really find grip because this is so fast and so flowing. I think Gregoire was talking overall across the morning there if traction is the issue. So yeah, frustrating for him. But yeah, let's see what they can do. See what they can do to dial that out in service. Some setup changes coming. I tell you who I am excited to see coming through this stage though, because this will suit him, is Oyt Tanak. They're really fast, really flowing, really committed. He'll be going into these corners a gear higher than everybody else, and then figuring it out when he we looked at the tyres and we said, that doesn't look too bad, does it? Is Oyt Tanak, the really fast, really flowing, really committed. He'll be going into these corners a gear higher than everybody else, and then figuring it out when he arrives. Meanwhile, a great run through from Elfyn Evans.
Yeah, he's done what he can, so it's over to Adrien Fourmeau. Remember, it's the Frenchman that Elfyn's chasing for that potential extra 2 championship points, 5.9 seconds, the gap between them coming into this one. But yeah,
you're quite right with that when we saw it at the start of the stage, we looked at the tyres and we said, that doesn't look too bad, does it? That's, of course, the harder compound tyre that we saw on the front left, so you'd expect that to be in reasonably good condition. You can see the side of that tyre there, not quite so good.
Yeah.
I would hazard that is a soft that he's got on there. There you go, that's the hard compound tyre, so you can really see that the blocks on it have really stood up to the conditions well. The harder compound working well in these conditions, but obviously it takes longer for the hard to switch on than the soft.
Elfyn, that's quickest through by almost 4 seconds. We can see that hard tyre on the front left. How was that working for you in here?
That was working okay. Obviously, it's quite a hard surface. But yeah, like all the others, you know, the effect is obvious in here, so yeah, I think we'll be good.
Yeah, did what he could. Wonderful view here from our eye in the sky. This is the man of the moment. He won his first stage of the rally in the last time out. All softs on the Estonian's car. He's a joy to watch on roads like this, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, this is, like I said, this is pure Oyt Tanak territory. He's just not, he's not afraid of it at all. He just gets stuck into it, and he becomes one with the car, and that Hyundai just dances around, and it's... yeah, it comes as no surprise that he is up on the splits.
One thing that some of our Estonian viewers picked up on at the end of the last stage, he did mention again that he said brakes again. I mean, obviously didn't affect him. He didn't really use the brakes very much in the previous stage, let's be honest, when he won it. But it certainly seems when he had the issue yesterday that we're able to, you know, do bleed the brakes there and get that fixed. So hopefully that's nothing too serious. And looking at the split times, doesn't look like that's the case, because he's 4.4 seconds up on Elfyn at 10.7 kilometres.
Yeah, really great insight from our Estonian fans there. Can't say that mine or PK's Estonian's up to much, but you know, that's great information. And the worst thing a driver's got when you hit the pedal and it doesn't feel firm and it starts to go spongy, if you've got air developing in the system, it just instantly sucks your confidence away, because look at him, he's using all of the road. He was right over on the grass when he turned in. And yeah, that's great stuff. This is Oyt Tanak. He knows that this is a stage that'll suit him. But yeah, when you've got a brake issue, you want to be able to hit the pedal and it's firm and it's a really positive bang when you hit the pedal. If it's spongy and soft, then it just takes your confidence away. 5.4 up on Elfyn Evans. That's phenomenal.
Incredible run again. 5:53.6. He's got back into fourth. He's now targeting podium position. And boy, is he fun to watch on these roads, using absolutely every inch of this wonderfully wide and flowing stretch of road.
Look at that, just turning in off. I mean, and that's the level that we are running at now, PK. Just, you've got to use every single millimetre of road, and it allows him to just carry that 2 or 3 kilometres an hour more through the corner.
So, Adrien Fourmeau, Alex Correa, we saw them enjoying a little cool-down moment under a tree a little moment ago, but now they're back in the heat of competition. Let's hear from Tanak, see how he thinks that was through there.
Oyt is another fantastic stage time, quickest through by 5.4. Also a stage win on the previous one, but have you been having some brake trouble again?
Let's say it's not the easy position still to be. Obviously, it's cleaning a lot, and we definitely have advantage compared to guys ahead. But yeah, we tried our best. And, I actually remembered one corner in this stage where I think it was maybe 14, 15 years ago. I spun S2000 and full speed. So I remember Marco was not too happy about that. So. Yeah, one corner I remember, so I tried flat and it worked flat this time. So.
Well, Seth said, didn't he, that every driver from the Baltics would know this one, so that's a nice little look back. Oh, he was no slouch in the old S2000 days as well, wasn't he, boy? Now, meanwhile, we are hearing a bit of news in here. The Katsuta may have had a bit of an issue early on, and that early split time from the Japanese star does reflect that. Meanwhile, we're keeping an eye on the battle between Elvin Evans and Adrian Fourmeau. You've got to say, Fourmeau's doing a great job of holding him off at the moment. He's 9/10 up on the Welshman at 9.8 kilometres, Jenny.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a stage that will suit Adrian as well, you know. Although that being said, he likes the technical stuff. We saw what he did in the power stage in Croatia, a real technical stage. He made it work for him, but Adrian's, you know, he needs to keep Elvin Evans at bay, doing what he needs to do. This is just one of those stages where you've got to be so committed. Really interesting that it said this year I took that corner flat where I spun it in a Super 2000 car many years ago. That's how much the sport has moved on. You're going that much faster, but you can take it flat now, and that's just the advances in the suspension and of course the aerodynamics of the car. You know, you've just got that much more grip. You can, and he does just turn in and sorts it out halfway through the corner.
Yeah, I mean, the huge wings and the aero kit, you're really going to feel it on rallies, and certainly stages like this, aren't you? Incredible stuff. Let's just see how Fourmeau does in here. He's not going to match 3.3 down on Tanak, but he was quicker than Evans all the way through there. Let's just wait for that final time to come through. Yeah, 2.1 seconds quicker than the Welshman. So he keeps Evans at arm's length for now. Tell you what as well, Chenny, the pace of this Puma now, it's the real deal, isn't it? He's fighting with Evans. You've got Sess up there in the mix at the front. The work that M Sport have done, because, you know, historically, certainly on some of these quicker rallies, they were left a little bit behind, but really not the case, the pace that Fourmeau and Sess are showing this weekend.
Yeah, you're quite right. Adrian stepping up to the mark. I just think everything's taken a bit of a step forward, hasn't it? You know, the cars. Oh, that looks like power steering to me. So sorry to just stop talking about Adrian there for a second, but you just saw the grimace on Taka's face. We'll see in a minute.
We know he'd stopped earlier on, but yeah, clearly something wrong here. Taka.
I'm hoping you're going to say that was a good stage. Only 3.3 down on Tanak, and we know how hard he's pushing as well.
I took every risk on that stage, to be fair. Personally, I don't think I can go much faster on that one. I took every risk and stay flat everywhere, so yeah.
You look pretty satisfied with it.
I'm satisfied with myself, but I'm not satisfied at the time. But anyway, we are pushing, and there's still a long rally, so we'll see.
Yeah, Adrian Fourmeau leaving nothing on the shelf through there, but obviously a little bit frustrated because he felt he should have gone quicker.
So here we go, Chenny. This is just 1.5 kilometres into the stage. Taka, talk us through what's gone on here.
He's outbraked himself just into that chicane, gone off the road and belted that tree. So, yeah, face first into the tree. That won't have done the front of that Yaris any good at all. And a stall as well. So there you go, he's got it going. It's so easy to do with those chicanes. You know, he managed to negotiate the first part of it, get through, get it turned left, but just wasn't able to get it turned through the second half of the chicane. And I think if he had that chance again, he'd have probably gone to the right. But the fact that he's grimacing like that, you can see, that for me is very much indicative of power steering failure. Yeah, you can see the front of that Yaris just has got a bit of it's been punched in the face, isn't it?
Yeah, so, and his forearms are he's going to be like Popeye at the end of this one, isn't he?
It's so hard to drive these cars without power steering. Imagine the only way that I like to compare it is if you go home and you switch the ignition on in your car on the driveway, static.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're not moving. Don't switch the engine on and then just try and turn the steering wheel. That's what they're doing. But again, it's compounded even more because these cars are moving around so much. The back of the car sliding, so you need to be able to correct and put in really finite and definite inputs into the steering. And when you haven't got power steering, you can't do it quickly. It's so easy to throw the car off the road.
Really interesting for McLaren. All of their time that they're quicker than their kind of nearest competitors comes in the early sector of the lap where they've got a bit more front end in the car. He's around 7 kilometres per hour quicker than, for example, than Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari into turn 2. But then that leads to kind of they're leaning heavily on that rear tyre through the rest of the lap at McLaren. to the point where you can see in the data by the end, as they go into turn 14, he's got some pretty evil oversteer in the McLaren. He manages to wrestle the car to the line and has a decent lap time as a result. As it happens, it's the quickest compromise for the conditions. But Lando, I think, worried a little bit about ability to deliver that pace to the racetrack when they go qualifying later on. The potential for error being the factor more for him in his concern about the balance of the car than actually the pace of it, which looks good.
Is it a fair assessment to say that everyone is trying to find the best compromise for this circuit?
Yeah, it is definitely that. I mean, there are a couple of teams on the flip side of the coin as well. When you look at Ferrari, that looks a little more understeery, much more conservative, actually, in the hands of Sainz and in the hands of Leclerc before he had his issue. But then towards the end of the lap, they snatch that time back. So they lose time all the way through the beginning of the lap, but then can deliver the traction at the end. Mercedes are the really interesting one because they're trying to do it with driving style. You can see with the way George Russell and Lewis Hamilton are approaching those early corners, big brakes, making sure that they get the car nice and settled and squared off before they deliver traction, even on their fast laps. Actually, they're trying to retain the tyre to the end of the lap, and then that gains for them marginally in the final couple of corners. Not the best compromise in the Mercedes cars, which is why they found themselves a bit further down the order.
There's sometimes a bit of a trade-off, particularly yesterday with the track temperature being so hot on these soft tyres. If you get the cars, you said, the McLarens...
Expecting Joe to pit here, but don't take any risk.
...to struggle with the overheating, whereas Mercedes doing more work in a straight line, then running with a bit more understeer. They're actually saving themselves for those final... There are 3 corners at the end of the lap, but they're low speed and they're so critical to lap time.
Well, as you know well, JP, you often don't think about it when you've got that lovely front end at the beginning of the lap, but every time you point the car in, you really challenge that rear tyre, challenging Red Bull, the rest of the field then, as McLaren move closer and closer and Mercedes move closer and closer in terms of pace through the year.
So we've been talking about the situation that we find at this Grand Prix, but this is a situation from the first round of the year to our most recent Grand Prix. You can see the progress that McLaren have made. You can see what that front wing has done for Mercedes, what it's unlocked for them, and you can see the pain that Ferrari have taken to bring an update that hasn't worked. If you're not moving forward, you're moving back, and that's what we've seen. Now down to, on average, the 4th fastest car, Aston Martin, in a bit of a no-man's land, and as we've seen all season long, ultra close in the midfield.
What's going to be interesting is how they stack up again after this weekend, because I think this new front wing for the Red Bull is gaining them significant performance here. You look through yesterday, Verstappen able to carry around 12 kilometers per hour, 7 miles per hour more than Sergio Perez through turn 4. Lap on lap, he was gaining in other places around the racetrack as well. Now, some of that's going to be driver, but he does clearly have a decent amount more front end from the new downforce package.
The thing is, so much of it's driver. Between Verstappen and Perez over the last years, the high-speed commitment that Max has got is where he's demolished Checo. Circuits like Silverstone really exaggerate it, but looking through last year's data as well, there's a gulf. When they have the same car, there's a huge gulf in the high speed. That's where Max is, he's an immensely skilled driver, but the feel and the confidence he's got in the high speed compared to a guy that's just slightly bereft of confidence at the moment exaggerates it. So the comparison is not entirely fair, I think, but nonetheless, when you see what both Red Bulls were doing in the comments yesterday, it's encouraging.
You can see it in the balance of the car as well, though. In the steering trace, there's a deeper turn throughout the whole racetrack for Perez as he makes the switchbacks. I take your point, JP. There's a gulf between them, isn't there, at this stage? Although, in the long run yesterday, on the medium tyre, by hook or by crook, Perez slightly quicker than Verstappen, perhaps as a result of having that little bit less front end and keeping the rear tyre in a little better through to the end of the long run.
Yeah, we know he's been good when it's rear limited. That is
and stability was a little bit harder into 5.
He's trying to just nurse the rear axle. Perez has been good over the years. And first lap, like for like, the 2 Red Bulls out there on their own, hard tyres on, 1/4 of a second to Verstappen. Honestly, I think that's pretty solid from Perez.
I think if he was able to reproduce that in qualifying later on, both team and driver would be really pleased. They're looking for a response for the 6-time Grand Prix winner. A lot of chat about who will be in that car going forward.
So I think you're right. I think that deficit would be good. The problem is he could be on the third row. If Verstappen just is on pole, 3,000 separated the two on the front row last year. Then you had 3 within a tenth.
Yeah.
If you're around this circuit, quarter of a second down, I think the base number for Perez is not bad there. But when in Bahrain, he'd be locking out the front row with Verstappen. He'd be coming second in the race. Now, with the way that the field has tightened up, the raw numbers would make it look like a...
Okay, if you'd like a more aggressive toggle for turn 2, let me know.
Yeah, let's try it.
2.5 tenths, but you'll have the Mercedes sliding in, the McLaren sliding in, maybe a Ferrari, and it looks a bleaker picture than it actually is.
I think that is why you're seeing drivers like Norris talk about the drivability of the cars, because almost everyone at a certain stage throughout this season has made a critical error in qualifying. We saw it with Verstappen yesterday. The peak lap that he did, big error, big oversteer through the exit of turn 2, lost himself a load of time, and then tumbled down the order. Drivers almost as concerned about the ability to deliver the lap in the car as the peak pace at this stage of the year, because it's proving so critical with margins so fine to be through or not through the various stages of qualifying.
So 53 minutes on the clock, not a huge amount of action out there on track. Just to bring you up to date with what Perez said after FP2 yesterday, he said it's the most comfortable he's felt with this car at this stage of the weekend in a while. So promising.
And Lando, this is a radio check from turn 12 all the way through. We are boxing this lap. So just keeping up the radio check round turn 13 as you approach the pit lane entrance, and I can't think of anything better to say.
Beautiful, all good.
Laps for the Saubers, McLarens have done the same, and this is Piastri then heading round on a medium tyre. Looks like he's going to be maybe getting ready for a flying lap at the end of this one. Maybe he's nursing the tyre, trying to keep it cool very slowly, but the Red Bull are going again, and Verstappen has just done the fastest first sector, trying to improve his time on the hard tyre. Interesting choice at this stage. Okay, Piastri is not winding it up at all. He's back in, and they're still just doing checks. But this guy is winding it up. Verstappen on a hard, leaning on it.
And heading down to turn number 12.
Oscar will be in his spot, so pull in front of him, in front of your garage.
As we finish the lap with Max Verstappen coming round that final corner, and he's going to put a time on the board. And as he does so, he moves to a 1:18.3, gives us the first opportunity of the day to check in with Ruth Buscombe. Ruth, what have you made of everything that we've seen with our running yesterday?
Well, very interesting, isn't it? Looks like we've got potentially a four-way fight for qualifying this afternoon. But right now, we've actually got some information about the race. So the Red Bulls were the only teams that kept both 2 hards and 2 mediums. And by them running that hard tyre now, it means that with all the information they learned from yesterday, they believe the medium is the better tyre, which is, of course, that race-winning strategy that Max did last year, the medium, hard, medium. We do have a split down the middle. With the Mercedes Alpine and then the rest of the midfield keeping 2 hards, Ferrari, McLaren and Aston keeping 2 mediums.
Ruth, why do you think... Let's hear from Verstappen.
Just the middle sector in some corners I'm understeering a bit much, but at the same time I don't have like massive amount of rear grip, you know, so I don't know if I really should take more front flap.
Why? Red Bull, they're the only 2 cars on track on a hard tyre. They're running low fuel. Verstappen's time is actually pretty sensible. He's only half a second away from what Norris did yesterday. But why are they going round on a hard tyre when they're the only cars on track and they're just cleaning it up for everyone else?
So, they're the only ones that we would expect to be running a hard.
Just the middle sector in some corners I'm understeering a bit much, but at the same time I don't have like massive amount of rear grip, you know, so I don't know if I really should take more front flap.
everyone else has got mediums and softs, so they probably...
Just an initial heads up, Max. How's ride under braking?
It's all good.
Understood. Thank you.
They were the only team that kept both, which means that they have the advantage that they can use the FP2 data, but as you point out, Jolien, they have the disadvantage that then they're kind of out of phase at this stage of P3. But, you know, they like to do this. They like getting their data in P2 before they decide.
Lovely stuff. Thank you, Ruth. We'll be checking in as we go throughout the weekend and throughout the season with Ruth Buscombe. We aren't having a huge amount on track at the moment as we have a look at Kevin Magnussen. Encouraging second practice session for him yesterday when he was 6th fastest on the weekend that the team announced that they would be parting company with the driver who Nico Hülkenberg was paying tribute to, once rivals, then became close friends as teammates. And they will be having a new driver lineup. Oliver Behrman already signed up for that team, took part in FP1 as well, and is trying to sort his F2 season out. It's not gone to plan, I think, to put it mildly. Also not going to plan yesterday. Some of the team radio from both Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso regarding the performance of their Aston Martin.
It's a massive upgrade, isn't it, to that Aston Martin? And it didn't look good in the hands of either driver. Very much not happy with it. Interesting listening into Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg yesterday. It was a big step forward in Silverstone. They looked relatively strong. They were so meh after the session. You didn't get a feel for... Hülkenberg was asked about his race run. He said, well, I was sort of catching a Ferrari, but then Ricciardo was catching me. It kind of is what it is. You get a sense that they don't feel like this is going to be their weekend, and they're just moving through it and seeing if they can scrabble the cars to some points, but it lacked impetus.
There's so many races, it's such a busy period of the season, and Haas, like so many of the midfield teams, like your Ricciardo Tsunodas and the V-Carbs, even a Williams, they're all so evenly matched. They could be out in Q1 if they don't maximise it, but it's suddenly if things come to them through qualifying, they can find themselves in the top 10. How many times have we seen Hülkenberg wind up in 9th or 10th on the grid, and it's on such fine margins? I think I've been times after FP2, you feel like you've had a good day, and you're like, I don't really know. I think, is everyone else having a good day? The track conditions are going to change. It felt good, but when it's so close, it's difficult to be, unless you're having an amazing day, it's difficult to be too buoyant, because just a couple of degrees of track temperature or minor things, one step different in setup that doesn't quite pay off, and you're actually having a really lousy weekend.
I think so at a circuit like this as well. So much of it's in the tyre preparation, isn't it? When you look at two cars with a reasonably similar amount of downforce delivery, how much grip you've got at the beginning of the lap, how much grip you've got at the end of the lap, and that can change set by set, delivery by delivery, setup by setup. That actually, really, all that matters is the literal lap that happens in whatever phase of qualifying you manage to make your way through. Everything else is a relative formality in terms of allowing the engineers to generally give you a balance and what you need in the car.
And do you know the other thing that I've always found in my career? If you qualify in the top 10, you often have the pace to sort of run in the top 10 in the race. If you qualify further down, it's very rare that the pace just comes alive. You sort of find your feet through a Grand Prix, and there's different phases, different tyres that you choose. But if Hülkenberg can get him, qualifying is so crucial, particularly on this track. And if you can get up towards the top 10, you sort of run in the rhythm of it. You feel the flow of the cars around you, and it sort of helps. If you're further down, because you haven't qualified so well, it's difficult to bring that to life in a midfield car. If you haven't got an inherent big pace advantage, then you can often just sort of have a lacklustre Sunday.
OK, talking of that battle in the middle of the pack, on the evidence of yesterday, let's send it downstairs to the pit lane, and Laura Winter, who's at Alpine.
Thank you, Alex. I thought you were going to say, talking of lacklustre, let's throw it down to Laura Winter, but we'll save that for another day, eh? I just wanted to say hello from the pit lane, but first of all, point out the angle at which Pierre Gasly's car is set at to come out of the garage. The pit lane here is pretty narrow, so the cars are actually angled in a way that they will basically get out as quickly and as efficiently and as safely as they can. The pit boxes, as you'll see here, are also at an angle so that when they come in, they can then get out again.
That was the flap setting.
This was a bit better. I mean, overall, I think the tires of course helped, but it's better now high speed.
Can drive straight in, whereas everybody else typically angles them somewhere between 6 and 9%. Most famously, in 2020, when we had a wet to dry situation, lovely Sebastian Vettel in his Ferrari pit box was delayed by a massive 9.2 seconds as he had to hold for traffic because it was just so tight. So if we get safety cars where everyone wants to come in, it could become another critical factor this weekend in the race.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The team's marking those, they're mandated in the regulations by the gap that they have to have, but they can choose the angle that they want down there. Bit of tape being relayed after, was it Aaron yesterday in F2?
There were plenty, actually. Yeah. I think it had been so hot out there that they'd basically melted the glue. Yes. We were well clear of 50 degrees track temperature yesterday, but those boxes have a gradient as well on them where you put all four wheels and then a gradient in the middle as well. Drivers are often scored. Each team has their own way of doing it. But drivers are scored by how close you are to your optimum position. They often do that with a camera which sits on the boom above where the driver will park. So all the way through free practice and through the races as well, when you review them, the team will basically evaluate you on your parking position. Very important, as we discovered last week with Lando Norris, slow pit stop at the end of the Grand Prix, partially due to, I know there were difficult conditions, but partially due to him being long in the box.
Ruth, was this the biggest pain? Or was Monaco a bigger pain as pit lane? Canada's pretty narrow, or used to be pretty narrow.
So if you are P4 in the championship, it is Monaco. Otherwise, it is Zandvoort. Zandvoort is one of the most narrow pit lanes, and it actually means if your neighbour double stops, you cannot physically double stop your cars. You have to wait in the queue.
What? Zandvoort's tighter than Monaco?
Yeah, because Monaco's actually on a bit of a bend, which actually helps as the driver gets in, and Zandvoort is, even tighter. They had
it's so far a lot better than yesterday. Okay, interesting, all right.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. But I know at Monaco, it's so tight from a driver's point of view coming into the pit box there. You sweep in around the end of Raskas, and you're immediately at the pit lane speed limit off the track. And
okay, understood. We see rear locking is a lot better than yesterday. We'd be happy to go rearwards on brake bias, if you like, if you want a bit more efficiency.
At the moment, so fast.
The right mirror is a bit messed up. Just fix it later.
Everyone finally getting up and running with programs. Max Verstappen's got the benchmark time on the hard tyre. Fernando Alonso second on a medium. Valtteri Bottas third on a soft. Pierre Gasly third on a soft. Lance Stroll fifth on a medium tyre.
So for me, the fact that the Red Bulls went out early shows they mean business still, and it shows that there's still more potential for them to get more out of this upgrade package that they've got on the cars. The reason that Verstappen, he's done 4 flying laps, he's done 8 laps total, and he's come through the pits a couple of times. They are just making small tweaks, whereas the likes of Alex Albon here and Sargent, Bottas, Gasly, even Alonso probably on a medium, they are really into qualifying mode with very few tweaks here or there. that they can really make on the car. As Red Bull's going early just gave them more time, and they obviously want to run through different setups to maximise that package. And they had a good day yesterday, but they're fine-tuning it very methodically, whereas everyone else is straight down to your sort of vague qualifying simulations immediately, and Norris shows exactly that. Fastest lap of the weekend by a mile.
I mean, we surmised whether Red Bull were running all of the engine mode they have available through yesterday, but the data appears to bear out that they're very similar to McLaren. They actually deploy for a little longer down towards turn 1, the energy system, and steal a bit of time in the shape of Verstappen. And actually the only real loss for Max is the error that he makes with a big snap of oversteer out of turn 2. Gains back all the way through the middle sector in terms of downforce, where particularly in the switchbacks where he changes direction in comparison to the McLaren. So for me, it's pretty nip and tuck actually between a well-driven Red Bull and a well-driven McLaren as to where the pace is. And so I'm not surprised they're getting out there and getting the work done.
Yeah, and how nice is that? The drivers are going to make the difference. In cahoots with their teams, trying to find the extra last little bit of 10th.
Almost sounds like motorsport, Jolyon.
No, I know, but it's not that anyone's got a huge car advantage. This is what you love to see. You're used to it in Formula 2, Formula 3, where the drivers make the difference. But sometimes the teams make more of a difference than the driver.
All right, McLaren 1 and 2, Mercedes 3 and 4. Norris ahead of Piastri, nearly half-second gap for Norris, who's never been out-qualified by a teammate around this circuit. Piastri in second, and then Hamilton ahead of George Russell. Hamilton 9 times on pole position around this circuit, but is 10-2 down in the qualifying head-to-head. Alex Albon is the driver in 5th. Hülkenberg going just behind him by 15 thousandths of a second. Charles Leclerc in the barrier yesterday. Lock up at turn 1 today.
Yeah, there's a big bump down there on the early braking phase, and Leclerc just hitting that as he's pummeling the left pedal. And that's not the start he wanted. That was into a first launch on a soft tyre. Sainz has gone through 7th place. Ferrari's really encouraging start to yesterday, petered out quite a lot.
Nice. Blue grip felt like it was just getting better and better.
Joe at 3 seconds on a lap. 2 seconds to Joe. There's 5 behind him to Perez.
Through just a moment, there's one of the kick Saubers. We actually had quite a near miss as well. Alonso, I'm not sure if he was on an out lap or a cool down lap, came trundling through here at turn 4. Max Verstappen at a much higher speed had to opt to dive down the inside into turn 5. You can see the Red Bull going through there. Most of the drivers, in all honesty, are using a lot.
We're happy to do a start from the box, so we can come and sit in the box and then do a start from there.
Yeah, it's not as good for me. But we can maybe do a start at the end of that.
We can absolutely do a start
run.
at the end. Yep, no problem. So just come and stop in the box.
The entry is for the drivers heading here into turn 4.
So one was a little bit on the edge, both axles.
Of a distance between there and the tyre wall, and Charles Leclerc gave us a great demo, and as he comes through right on cue, a much slower pace than yesterday, but great shots we're getting here at turn 4.
Alice, you were just saying hello to everyone at home, but I can't tell you how close Charles Leclerc came to doing what he did yesterday, again today, all over the curb.
I cannot believe in the background of Alice as she started talking there, Leclerc was really close to losing it again on the curb. That was the first time he's come through there on a push lap since he's binned it yesterday, and there was no holding back, was there?
I don't know what's happened, but
completed a time left behind.
Front brakes.
And also format, I think, was affected by traffic. Confirm.
Yeah, it's on fire.
Like that, really something you have to get absolutely on top of. Could be an issue, but so often when you head down into a turn one like that, it is just plain, it feels broken because it's cold. Could be the issue for Gasly.
It's quicker right now, the track, because it's cold, but it certainly might feel different, especially when you're hitting the brakes for the first corner and you're attacking that, and maybe you've had the same warm-up as yesterday, and the brakes might need slightly more. They don't really need a huge amount of work at all, generally, but it is a little cooler. Maybe you just need to recalibrate slightly. Norris's time is 0.8 quicker than he managed yesterday. Whoa.
There's all sorts going on track. As we approach the halfway point of the session, the Ferrari and the Haas getting too close for comfort.
That was Sainz on an outlap and Hulkenberg on an outlap. So they were just fighting for a little bit of track position, but Hulkenberg looking for the gap on the inside at the penultimate corner. Sainz saying, no, stay behind me, please.
I mean, the gap in front of them is vast as well. It's a bit unnecessary, to be honest, but Sainz has got his lap underway. Let's see how it's going. Ferrari looking really understeery through yesterday, and they didn't quite have the speed in the car, but looking relatively well plugged in through this first sector.
Let's stay. Whoa, he's fighting the car as well, exit of turn 4. Both cars, you say they were understeery, but they were also loose in moments as well. Leclerc obviously crashed. Sainz, out of the final corner yesterday, had a big traction moment as well, nearly losing it.
Yeah, I think it pushes wide over that inside curb, but the Ferrari does seem extra susceptible, doesn't it, to being out on the curves. It had the big wobble, obviously the incident for
We recommend forward brake balance for turn 6.
The car with a lot of load on, but both Ferrari drivers pushing the limits. Sainz comes through and will get an improved time on the board, jumps up to second place. Still 3.5 tenths down on Norris though.
1:17.289 for Carlos Sainz, who's been on the podium here in the past. He's been in the points in the last 8 consecutive Hungarian Grand Prix. Norris, Sainz, Ricciardo ahead of Tsunoda, which has not been the form so far this season in qualifying, which is 9-3 in the head-to-head battle. Carlos Sainz again having a giant old flirt with the curb there. It's not a comfortable part of the racetrack for either Ferrari driver, the exit curbs of turn number 4.
Interestingly, Red Bull are back out there with both drivers still on their hard tyre, and they are now into long runs. So, again, Ruth, they are going very, very different in this session compared to the entire rest of the field.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the kind of the price you pay for waiting to see the data, but they are currently, leading the championship, so it's difficult to say they're doing it wrong. I think each team tends to take a different approach on the way they collect data and the bias they put on how they collect data across a race weekend. So what could be excellent for Red Bull may not be the way that a McLaren optimises data collection, shall we say.
Lovely stuff. Good lap for Kevin Magnussen, who's moved up to 7th position, just behind his teammate. Hulkenberg and Magnussen, 6th and 7th. Hulkenberg back-to-back 6th places. That was a lovely start whilst it lasted, because Charles Leclerc has improved up to P3.
Norris pressing on in the McLaren. He's come through the pits. He's going for a second push on this soft tyre. Sector, 3 corners to go. The soft tyre really should be, even in a slightly cooler temperature, a 1-lap tyre. But at this stage of the weekend, it's still cleaning up the track slightly after overnight. Any bits of dust or gravel that have come on. can see the way that Lando's fighting the car, cannot commit to the turn-in all that well into the final corner, and the time goes away. Meanwhile, George Russell is at the top spot.
Yeah, 1:16.826 for Russell, who was on pole here in 2022 and over 20 laps that day, but faded from contention. The cooler conditions played a big part in Mercedes being brought into contention back in 2022. Fairly regular conditions this time last year for Lewis Hamilton, who took pole position by 0.03 of a second. But Russell, multiple poles. Only other driver in the field other than Verstappen to take multiple pole positions this year. So he's had good form, and when you're out qualifying a 7-time world champion, 10-2, that's borne out with many stats.
You know what this is? I think this is Mercedes entering the fight for the weekend. Cooler temperatures today.
Any thoughts on a further front wing adjustment, Kev?
I think for new tyres, plus 0.3.
But, yeah, Russell.
I think for the last one, it's not going to be a good lap anyway, so I'm thinking about just giving it a go with another 0.4.
Just behind me here. Once again, you can see the slight angle of the car as it leaves. The car carrying 2 upgrades coming into this weekend, one of which is circuit specific, and that is of course to do with cooling, as many of the teams are. The other one is the rear corner as well, the winglets there. That's a performance upgrade through the season.
Just another suggestion is that you took a little bit too much curb maybe at 6, and it cost a little bit of time in 7 on that last lap.
Thank you, Laura. It will be really intriguing to see what our midfield battle looks like, but it looks very competitive at the front of the field once again. Oscar Piastri finding an improvement, the fastest final sector of the session so far.
So that is seconds out, round 1. Complete. Russell, Norris, Piastri. Like for like on a soft tyre, 2 flying laps each. They managed to generally find something on the second flyer. Norris didn't, as the tyre overheated and he was scrabbling through the final sector. Hamilton didn't really either, so he's a long way adrift. But that is a pretty close pace between those top 3. The Ferraris as well have had a couple of flyers on a soft, a little further adrift. We have no idea about Red Bull at this stage because they are doing something completely different today.
Yeah, they've yet to enter the simulation stage of things. Let's look at the current pace. There's an interesting contrast to what we saw yesterday on the medium tyre, where Perez on the long run was slightly ahead of Max Verstappen. You can see the comparative times on their long run. That's an addition for this year. I think it's a really great addition as well to give you a picture of not just the simulation, but the long run pace as well. Sam Collins has joined us in the commentary box as Alex Brundle goes off to prep for the Formula 2 race that you can see in between FP3 and Formula 1 qualifying. Looking forward to calling that one with him later on. You can see every minute of that season on F1 TV. Sam, what's caught your eye?
Yeah, well, I'm still, Jolyon was talking about it earlier, I'm still a bit mystified by what Red Bull are really up to. They've got 2 cars in 2 very different configurations, and they're clearly comparing to Sergio Perez old specification, Max Verstappen in the shiny new specification. But yeah, they've only been playing with these hard tyres, and it just doesn't quite make sense. Have they discovered something with saving softs going into qualifying, going into the Grand Prix? We're expecting it to be super hot tomorrow, so Ruth, I mean, what are they up to?
So they're the only team that saved both an extra hard and an extra medium, which means because they don't want it, you don't actually need both of them. You have to make a decision. You have to run one of them in P3, whereas everybody else can do soft because they want to keep their 2 tyres they've already committed to. They've got to, I like the word jettison the hard in this session, because What they don't want to do, is save all 3 sets, because that would leave them with very few softs. But what is interesting is the Aston Martin, which is the only other car out there on a different compound. Now, they've done something different again. Going into qualifying, they'll be the only team with just 1 hard, 1 medium, and the rest softs, which means they're going to have to run on the softs, which may be because of their P2 long run with Stroll yesterday, who was actually marginally faster than Alonso. Very strange.
My tyre is not great after lap 1, unfortunately. Felt quite a bit of a deggy on them.
Able to do a stint with quite a lot of management. He gained a lot of positions off the start line, so they may be thinking bias it towards start performance and then do a too long stint, because they're happy that they can get further on that medium and they're hard and commit to a shorter stint. And what we have seen here, both last year and in many years around here, is because of the micro roughness and the energy around this track, that often compounds end up quite similar. So it depends, rather than obviously Silverstone, we saw dramatically difference between the soft, the medium and the hard at the end of the race. Here, the medium and the hard can be quite similar in terms of performance, with teams biasing towards ones that work slightly better for them. And we don't tend to get big issues on any of the compounds here. But as you say, yeah, that is very different to what the other 9 teams are doing.
Thank you, Ruth. Sam, you're always across the weather. I don't want to say a ludicrous amount, but you do keep us updated on the weather. Are we expecting conditions to be warmer tomorrow?
More than warmer. I mean, if you're hanging around on a rim of a volcano, sort of warm. The forecast track temperature is over 60 degrees centigrade, so more than 20 degrees warmer than now. The highest we've seen for a few seasons, actually. I think we saw 53 or 54 last year.
60 degrees
yeah.
Track temperature. What we saying with air temperature then?
Air temperature would be in the 30s, 31 to 35. That's what we're sort of expecting. But,
Thank you.
There you
Thank
go.
you, Graphics.
I don't think we're going to be worrying about any rain particularly. There's none showing up
you need
at
that
all.
for shade.
Well, I think you do. And,
Come on.
And I think it is going to be incredibly hot. We saw 59 degrees yesterday track temperature, so it's not massively hotter than yesterday, but it is substantially hotter than it is today. And that's going to bring me on to something I want to have a chat with Ruth about in a few moments. But I'm going to show you some pictures on the screen first, so we'll come back to that point. But I think there's just a really interesting thing a few teams may be playing with right now.
Ruth, did you want to jump in at that point?
Yeah, rather toasty, isn't it? The thing here is that the track and air split is often one of the season highest, because we normally come in summer where, the sun is strong. No one needs a strategist to tell them that. So we end up with these big splits when we have cloud cover as well. So not only are we expecting something in the region of 4 to 5 plus ambient, that can correlate to about 20 degrees track. And actually going into qualifying, as Sam will definitely know because he's Mr. Weather around here, the sun is expected to potentially poke out. There is actually a 40% chance that it could even be some rain. So teams will have very different qualifying prep on that C5 tyre, depending on if the track temperature is similar to now, around 38 degrees, or if it is about 20 degrees warmer. You're going to take your outlap completely differently.
It's great to bring you as much detail as possible in this final hour of running for FP3. We are watching.
And Max, can you sync 8th gear to turn 12, please?
This season. McLaren currently 2nd and 3rd in the timing tower on the left-hand side. Let's get an update about their progress in the session from Laura Winter.
Thank you very much, Alex. Yeah, Piastri is the car that I'm focusing on at the moment. He's just in the car there, getting ready, I think, to head out any moment, so I will dive out the way if I need to. But obviously, this is an important session for the Australian. He had a water system issue that delayed going out yesterday. He then had floor damage after going wide at turn 4 in FP2 yesterday. So So important for him and his team to get some much-needed data on this circuit. And so many you speak to expecting Oscar Piastri to pick up his first win this season with a McLaren that is capable of winning races and with the form, the composure and the mentality that the young Australian has as well. I think important for him that he's running P3 at the moment, just a smidge off his teammate Lando Norris and getting some much-needed data in.
Cheers, Laura. Thank you for the update down at McLaren. A team transformed in recent times and contending no matter what type of circuit that we head to, whether it be the fast-flowing nature of Silverstone, whether it be the medium and low-speed corners of the Hungaroring. 5th place for Charles Leclerc at the moment. He's logging another lap, running again on those soft tyres. Had his Friday running interrupted.
And in terms of outlap, you did well. We can back up a bit more in turn 12, 13.
Engineer for a long time at that team, and we move to the second Ferrari in the order. It doesn't feel as frenetic as FP3 sometimes can. We do have cloud cover compared to yesterday, and
I want to test one thing in the chicane. Could you please keep an eye on lap time to compare with my best lap?
Hamilton and Magnussen. Sainz is going to log another lap.
Lance, do you think there's anything left in this tyre?
Yeah, I want to do one more for the braking.
Disappear downhill into turn 3. Carlos Sainz is expected to be the next car coming through, or a little bit slower than Lewis Hamilton. And just where Sainz went through there, it's such a tricky entry. Alonso coming through, disappears off into the distance, but it's not, the camber's not in your favour here on the entry of turn 2, which I would almost class as well one of the overtaking spots, one of the very few overtaking spots around this track. So you often see cars try and dive down the inside. We saw it in the F3 race earlier on in that battle for the lead. So you'll see some drivers go wide, tend to have a few lockups going in here. You're trailing that braking, trying to release that brake, get the car rotated to then get on the throttle to head through the fast, flat out turn 3 up to turn 4. So a nice little spot here that we found. And I think the one thing that stands out the most to this corner is how tricky it is, how downhill it is, but how fast they then have to exit to get that run all the way up into the second sector.
In talking of that second sector, Alice, that's where Lewis Hamilton was fastest of anyone so far in the session, but add up the entire lap, and you can see at the bottom of your picture at the moment, the Mercedes are split in favour of George Russell, 0.2 of a second to the good, making a lot of time in that final part of the lap. And with 17 minutes to go, it's Russell ahead of Hamilton. We've got outlaps for all the other cars, though, as we head into quali simulation territory. There's Pete Bonington, familiar voice that you'll hear on the radio to Lewis Hamilton, able to reprise his line, get in there, Lewis, after the last Grand Prix. And show you who's got the most wins around this circuit. This is very much Hamilton territory. On pole here last year, 8 wins. A reminder, he's the only driver in history to have 9 wins at a single circuit. He did it at the last Grand Prix at Silverstone. He can do it at this Grand Prix as well, if these cooler conditions persist. If we get Sam Collins temperatures tomorrow, then you would think that maybe Mercedes would drop back. Their car works better in cooler, well, the cooler side of the temperatures. It's not exactly chilly out there with an air temperature of 26 degrees and a track temp of 37, but the cloud cover is keeping the temperature of the tarmac lower. Let's go gyro cam for Lando Norris, who is building up on this outlap on the soft tyre, preparing tyres and brakes, ready to push on in a few moments' time. As he completes his prep process, he will begin pushing around the 2.7 miles to 4.3 kilometres in the company of Jolyon Palmer.
Yeah, let's take gyro cam with him for this next 4.5 kilometres. 1 corner to go with the outlap, and we lose gyro cam. It's such a nice perspective because he's
Get the
winding
gallery
it
on
up.
the phone.
He's winding it up for a flying lap now. So Norris did a really good lap on his first run of softs. Didn't improve on his second flyer like the Mercedes, but can the McLaren take more out of it on this first lap on the new set of softs? Lando fighting the car slightly on the exit of turn 1. Still a good front end there. And now we're coming up to the corner that Alice Powell was just talking about. Fighting the car all the way to the exit. Overall, isn't entirely using all the road because you can now keep it pinned through turn 3 as well. And wow, that's a really good first sector from Norris. This car looks like it can fire those tyres up. The first sector was very good for him yesterday, and he's constantly on the edge of just a tiny bit of oversteer from the mid-corner to the exit phase, using everything through the chicane and a little more. See the way, you can feel the G coming through these corners now. We're coming to the fastest one here, through turn 11, sweeping, and he's quite sparing of the exit curb, but he is nearly half a second up on the Mercedes. Now, this is where the Mercedes were quite quick yesterday in the lower speed. Has Norris got the rear tyres left to keep it going? He seems to. Still leaning on the outside front tyres. There we go, fighting the rear out of the final corner. Can he keep it to the line? Yes, he can. Fastest in all 3 sectors. Very evenly matched in the final one between him and George Russell, but he made the difference in the first 2, and that is a big difference.
What a thoroughly enjoyable lap on board with Lando Norris, who, if he's on the podium this weekend, will have his best total of Formula 1 podiums in a single season. He's looking for his 8th.
That is a lovely camera angle.
It is great.
For this track particularly, because it's just such a sequence of corners through the middle sector particularly. As we pick up Piastri here, the left of turn 8, the speed's just building all the way through here. 9, just a feather and come through, flat out through 10. Another little feather, maybe a dab of brake into turn 11 and run a bit more curb. Piastri a 10.5 down on Norris, but the sequence there of speed building, left and right again, is just lovely. And then can you hold on to it through the final 3 corners? It was just a slight oversteer for Norris in this final corner as the soft tyres were giving up a bit. Piastri looks smoother. No big corrections for him towards the exit, and it pays off. Fastest final sector for Piastri, so that's the difference. McLaren really showing that they have the pace over all 3 sectors at the moment, but we haven't seen what Red Bull can do still on the softs.
That lack of moment in the final corner, bringing Oscar Piastri, who always seems to get closer and closer as we progress through the weekend. Only in his second season of Formula 1, he's 0.04 of a second away from Lando Norris' best time. Oscar Piastri hoping to be the 6th maiden winner around this circuit, and to join Damon Hill, Fernando Alonso, Jenson Button, Heikki Kovalainen and Esteban Ocon as drivers who took their first win around this track.
Picture-in-picture, Nico Hülkenberg on a set of softs. He's done the fastest first sector of anyone so far. Yeah. It's 2 corners and some straight lines, so that has obviously working pretty nicely on big braking and straight line. He's going to lose a little bit of time through the middle sector. Yeah, he's lost half a second compared to Norris, so the time is now ebbing away for Hülkenberg, but still going to be a tidy lap if he can get it through these.
Sure. Okay, so why don't we suggest +2? Would you be happy? Okay.
They barely found anything, both of them, from the considering they did it on their second push, or Russell did, to go to the top of the times on their second push on the first run. Natural track evolution plus a new set of boots, and they should have found plenty more than that, and it's left them quite in the lurch really. Half a second down on Norris and only just ahead of Albon and Hülkenberg. Verstappen finally puts on a set of softs, and this is him on a push lap, bouncing his way, looking a little less compliant coming through turn 2, the Red Bull. Upgraded Red Bull, trying to make it a little bit better over the bumps. Still comparatively bumpy, I would say.
Barcelona braking, turn 5, turn 14. Verstappen just left turn 2.
second of performance. Max is trying to find about 7 seconds, so trying to get your references on one flying lap is harder. If anyone can do it, this guy can do it. Into the final corner. So Norris did leave something on the table, didn't he, in the final sector. Verstappen comes through and doesn't make up for that. 3/10 down in the fight, but McLaren are looking good.
McLaren 1 and 2. Max Verstappen putting on the soft tyre for the first time in the session. Daniel Ricciardo, former winner around this circuit, moving up to 5th. Crucially, for VCARB's weekend, ahead of Williams and ahead of Haas at this stage of comparison. 10 minutes to go. Advantage McLaren in these conditions as it stands.
Ferrari's on outlaps now. Perez just leaves the pits as well, and I don't think we can rule out Perez at this stage. He's having a good weekend. See if he can take that into a soft tyre. It's not always easy to put it all together when it really counts, and that's going to be always the main measurement for your driver comparisons, teammate comparisons. And for Perez, it will make or break his weekend if he can be on the same row of the grid as Verstappen.
You've got the two Ferraris being compared there. Sainz in the red of the graphic. Leclerc was in the whites, and now it's time for a last attempt to turn the wick up around the two DRS zones. The rear wing wide open, and Sainz pushing on, looking for a lap time that gets him back into the competitive nature after a slightly lackluster Grand Prix where he's a little bit in no man's land and relied on strategy and good skill behind the wheel to keep himself in contention.
Let's see how he is through turn 4. This is where they've both looked pretty lively.
Any flap adjust, Nico? Maybe on the first lap you would take more, but maybe second push, not worth it.
Yeah, not really, no.
Okay, we'll leave it.
That's bottoming in turn 3 is starting to be quite a bit excessive, really.
Understood, we'll review it.
Tyres are very hot.
But yeah, just losing a bit. At the moment, it does look like it's once again a McLaren Red Bull showdown at the top.
Got a yellow flag in Sector 2. Hearing in my ear that Lewis Hamilton, the most successful driver around this circuit, has gone for a spin. He is static on our driver tracker as we see George Russell improving Sector 1. Sector 2, nothing to be offered in that final sector. No improvement for the driver in 4th. His teammate recovering to the racetrack, and he's kept him there.
Hamilton was also improving on a second time lap on this soft tyre. but obviously pushing too hard. The tyres going away on the second lap. Russell couldn't hook it up in the final sector. Hamilton couldn't hook it up in the middle sector. Managed to keep it out of the barriers by the looks. Rejoins, leaves a bit of grass on the racing line coming through those sweepers in the middle sector.
Turn number 10.
Car's on the edge already, and then it goes. The barriers are close, but Hamilton...
The gear shocking was quite a lot in exit turn 1.
The way that he turned in, the cut, there we go, he's already fighting the car, and then you can even see offline, you get slightly wider of the racing line, and there's so much dust out there. You're not hiding to nothing. But it came from that initial oversteer, and he just kept it in. Managed to keep it out of the barriers.
He was very close to that advertising boarding as he spun around. I think he was very lucky not to clip that there. It was extremely close. Just a quick note on the front of the Mercedes that one of our production team spotted, and I was going to talk about later on, but if you look at the number 44 in the front of Lewis's car, he's closed up that driver cooling duct. That's something the teams can change from circuit to circuit. There's a lot of speculation about the size of the hump on the nose of that Mercedes, whether it's really all to do with cooling the driver, or have they adjusted the suspension, and is that why they've made a little step forwards? And we're not quite sure about that one at the moment.
The spin for Lewis Hamilton got in the way of a push lap for Esteban Ocon, who finds himself in 20th position, former winner of this Grand Prix in 2020.
And Fernando Alonso as well, who's just behind, so...
It felt like a gear was not synced, but it was synced, something wrong.
Copy. We see the data, we have a look.
Change their rear bodywork in accordance with the temperature today. Now, the reason I'm saying this is quite interesting is because the temperature is much cooler than expected. Now, this is the rear bodywork of the Haas. Now, hopefully we'll see a Haas out on track as I talk about this, but this is the package that Haas expected to run through the rest of the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. And the section I wanted to talk about is this very large, wide cooling outlet on the rear bodywork. Now, if you look at what Haas also have available to them, slightly narrower package here. This is from earlier in the season, not running that this weekend by the look of it, but they are currently running, and this is from the top view, a very narrow section.
Support entry turn 2.
Yeah, still a bit up the edge of the rear.
Watch for Sargent. Sargent pushing now, 3 seconds.
The team's freedom to change the bodywork of the car between qualifying and the race. Which is
There's some cutoff on the engine exit turn 2. Up cutoff.
situation a few times, I suspect. Now, the rear bodywork and hot temperature, are the teams gambling on getting a low drag performance for qualifying?
It's kept, so just try and get your tyres in the right window. Obviously, with that disruption, it's not quite as we planned now.
When you get to tracks like this, where your track temperature is massively changed and your effective temperature of your car is very different to the ambient change, is often quite a nightmare. And it's one of the elements where your track areas become kind of the rock stars of the weekend if they're able to get it right. If you do get it wrong, obviously there are ways of kind of making it slightly easier in the race, which is kind of lift and coast, moving out to the side, so you're not kind of running behind people. But yeah, as you say, it's kind of an element of performance that isn't often seen, that's kind of a battle between trackside aeros and aero departments that you don't normally get to see.
Verstappen with the biggest lock-up of the lot at the end of this session, down into the first.
Staying gear, slow in, slow in.
The FIA allow you to make big changes when you can all see it coming.
Well, not stop on the marks, hold brake pressure, and we can just do a standard launch. We don't need to lay rubber.
A very tight, closed-up rear bodywork. Other teams are still quite open, so it's a little bit of a difference. And I wonder if there's going to be some text messages and SMS messages going to race control, to the technical delegate going, "Oh, isn't it very hot tomorrow?"
SOS messages going to race control by the sounds of it, if the volcanic crater temperatures of Sam Collins come in.
Lando Norris has topped the session ahead of Oscar Piastri. What do you reckon, Ruth?
Going into qualifying, I think it could be once again a McLaren-Verstappen showdown, isn't it? So, yeah, it does look like the Mercedes, the touch off, and then tomorrow, as it is warmer, I've been told, someone mentioned it a couple of times, we're expecting the race pace of that Mercedes to take a little bit of a hit. Doesn't look like they've solved that issue. And yeah, I think Ferrari probably...
Oh, he's not opening a lap. He's doing whatever he's doing. We have to go around again.
No, you've got no time, so let's try and get what we can on this lap.
No, man, I didn't start it.
Supplier before, and there is a long-held theory that the way they did the track temperatures were different. So our current supplier, Meteo France, gives us an average track temperature, so we tend to get about a higher track temperature now than we did back with our former one, because on that ambient was 42.5, hottest race ever. It was only 56.7 degrees track.
Okay, so the answer to my question, hottest ever track temperature?
See, I think that's an average, so I don't work on singles. Sorry.
Oh, but
I've lost the pub quiz.
You were spot on with the ambient temperature.
It's all right. It's all right.
42.5 degrees in Bahrain, but the track temperature. So, great background, because this is since the Pirelli era that I'm really talking about, where records began. But Sam, you look like a guy that knows these stats.
I know it's in the 60s. I think it's about 61.5. But I'm factoring in pre-season testing, so I think it may have been in a pre-season test at Bahrain, 61.5 or something like that. However, I do remember sitting at
6 mid corner, the rear is very loose. I feel like I need to right up.
Third hottest was yesterday.
Discovery Houston, press to ATO.
Liftoff of mission 41D, the first flight of the orbit of Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
3, 2, 1, 0, 0, FMS, liftoff. Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery's 4 computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.